So when you're building a vintage bike and you're using vintage components, sometimes those components will have no presence online whatsoever in regards to information, or you'll stumble across a forum where there's a discussion about the component, but about 2 to 3 posts down, it ends up in some random argument, it goes nowhere, doesn't get to the point, and sometimes even the information is completely wrong. For example, when I purchased my Diamondback Master TG road bike, I didn't know the seat post size. The seller didn't list it, didn't know. So I stumbled across a forum where 2 or 3 people said the seat post size is 26.8 millimeters. 26.8 millimeters, it works. So that's what I bought. Put it in and it was way too loose, did not fit, and I had to resell it. So I wasted my time and money because of that forum. Whereas this is actually 27 millimeter seat post and it works completely fine. So I had to figure that one out on my own. Basically what I'm getting at is most likely if you're building a bike with vintage components, you're going to have to experiment yourself and see what works best for you. For example, in this video, I'm going to see if the Suntour Alpha 3000 rear derailleur is better or worse than the Suntour Cyclone 7000 rear derailleur. Hopefully I do feel a difference, but I potentially could not feel the difference and they could feel exactly the same. That's the whole world of vintage building using vintage components. Traditionally, the Suntour Cyclone 7000 rear derailleur is supposed to be better than the Alpha 3000 rear derailleur, but my shifting setup is friction only. So I'm not too sure if I'm going to get any results. But secretly, I really want the Alpha 3000 rear derailleur to stay on this bike, simply because the rear derailleur logo matches the chainstay protector on my frame. So what I've noticed is the rear derailleur can feel really stiff, and I can feel that in the down tube shifters when I'm shifting. Also, the billet is a little funky. There's this cylindrical thing that has a spring inside, and it makes the cage plates feel really stiff, and it almost feels as stiff as a clutch. Lastly, in order to clamp down the shifter cable, you do need an actual wrench rather than the traditional Allen key. So I'm gonna go ahead and swap out the rear derailleurs. Hopefully the Cyclone rear derailleur feels a bit better in my down tube shifter when I do swap them out, but let's see. All right, just testing if the chain will jump into the spokes. You always want to test the highest 2 gears because sometimes you'll get it set up where it won't jump down to the lowest gear and it just skates. But you don't want to allow it to jump into your frame. Trust me, I've done that. I just love friction mode. It's so easy to set up. It took me about 5 minutes, but the limit screws are set. Everything is ready to go. So let's go for a ride and see if I even feel a difference with the new rear derailleur. Side note, I went back to the Suntour Alpha 5000 front derailleur, and this is actually what sparked this idea because the feel is just so much better than the Alpha 3000 front derailleur in regards to the feel at the down tube shifters. So that's why I even wanted to try the swap in the rear derailleur to see if it improves the down tube shifter feel in the rear. My 40 tooth front chainring and 24 tooth cog in the back. I'm just barely making it sitting down, but standing up is pretty comfortable. Okay, so I made it up the biggest hill in my climb. And it's so funny, that's actually the start of my ride. So it sucks, but in order to get to Red Rock all the time, I gotta do this hill. But I was in my 21 and 24 tooth cog, really cranking the power down, and the rear derailleur doesn't skate or go shift or anything. So far so good. Now there's a certain place where they're building a trail, but it's not quite complete. But I like to practice my sprints there because there's nothing really out there, there's no pedestrians, so let's get to that. Okay, so I'm gonna do a few sprints, see if the rear derailleur stays in its position and once again doesn't ghost shift or skate. So let's do this. So in a previous video, I did mention when you're riding in friction mode, there comes a situation where you're coming down a hill and you know you have to stop at the bottom of the hill. And what winds up happening is it's hard to hear which gear you're in and feel as well, because then you're just trying to downshift, but you're just spinning and you can't hear because of the wind and everything. I really came to figure out that what works best for me is I'll shift to my smallest chainring and then one gear down from my biggest gear. So instead of my 13 tooth cog, I'll be in my 15 tooth cog and my 40 tooth front chainring. And then if I come to almost a complete stop or a complete stop, I'll be able to have a gear that is efficient enough where I can accelerate again. Even if I don't come to a complete stop, I'll try to show an example here. Hopefully it shows up on the camera, but this is how I have solved that issue. So far, the shifting has been a lot smoother. I'm actually happy that I'm starting to feel a difference. So you may be wondering, well, did I have the down tube shifter mounting bolt tightened a little too tight? Well, the best part is I kept it the same with my Alpha 3000 rear derailleur, my last riding session. So it's actually the same. I haven't changed the tightness or loosened it or anything, and it's significantly smoother. So I didn't get it on camera, but I was kind of doing sloppy shifts where I'll shift into a cog, let it rub a little, and then start sprinting or climbing. Because if you have a flexi frame along with a cheap flexi rear derailleur, that's another way of experiencing ghost shifts, is that combo. I already know this Fuji frame is really stiff for what it is. So I knew that the Fuji frame was not flexi. So I knew it would come down to the rear derailleur if there were any ghost shifts or issues. But once again, so far so good. Man, at this moment, the shoulders going to and from the Red Rock entrance and everything are just so littered with rocks. It's crazy, and glass too. But I've been blowing through rocks and glass like crazy. I hit a huge glass pile in my Michelin Dynamic Classic. Not a problem at all. I really like these tires. They were so inexpensive
and they're really durable. The only thing is, I used to run them at like 80 to 85 PSI. They were kind of sluggish, but I bumped it up to like 90, close to 100. The max is 102. Oh, they're beautiful. Between 90 to 100 PSI, I highly recommend. At this point, I know this is the better rear derailleur. Unfortunately, I won't put the Alpha 3000 rear derailleur back on this bike, even though it looks good, but I really need it to be efficient rather than just looking good. This really fits the bill on a better quality component. It does match the Michelin Dynamic Classic logo, so it doesn't look too out of place with this build. But yeah, I didn't experience one go shift, the wind out here, man. The down tube levers are a lot smoother. So that really just proves that it is a better component. If you're looking for a better rear derailleur than the Alpha 3000, try the Suntour Cyclone 7000 rear derailleur. It's significantly better. I don't have experience with it in index mode, but hopefully in the future I'll be able to do a build where I'll have the proper spacing on my freewheel so I can experience index mode. You know what's funny is I know for a fact the chain is not technically long enough for this setup, hence why the cage for the rear derailleur is really far forward. But honestly, it works totally fine. I don't think I'm at a point in my experience with riding that I will do big chain ring and big cog. I always avoid that. I never get close to that. So right now, I know it's kind of a goofy angle. I'll eventually get another chain so it looks better, but if it works, fine, and it's not just constantly like grinding or feeling like there's a lot of friction with it, where it really, there's no friction when I'm pedaling. So I know that it works fine now. It's no big deal. So today the weather is all over the place. As you can see on this side, looks pretty good. A few clouds in the sky, but then you turn around here and there's totally a big storm coming. So I better get going home actually. I have to rush home because of the storm coming in. Let me give you one more tip. If you're just starting out with down tube shifters or don't have years of experience with down tube shifters under your belt, I recommend whenever you're about to shift, just take a quick glance down. There's a few times, about 2 or 3 times, where I reached down and I never looked, and my finger would just brush the spokes in the tires. And boy, that hurts really bad. And it could have potentially been a really bad injury. But I'm very lucky and thankful that never happened. But now I don't have to look down anymore. It's all muscle memory. But if you're just starting, definitely take a quick glance. Don't take your eyes off the road too long, but yeah, look down and then shift by feel. Dana, that's an interruption. That storm coming in.
Okay, back at home. Wow, that storm was totally unexpected. I had no clue that was gonna roll in so violently and so quick. So as you can see, there's actually no chain. Now, I was reviewing the footage that I filmed out there of the angle of my rear derailleur, how it was so far forward. I'm telling you, I didn't feel it at all when I was pedaling and shifting. It felt great. And like I said, it was such an improvement from the Alpha 3000 rear derailleur. So what I did was I went and got another 9-speed chain, and I mentioned before that the original 9-speed chain that was on here was actually cut to fit another bike and its gearing that had a compact crank and everything, but this is a 52. So I have a brand new chain. I'm gonna size it and have the correct chain size on here. That looks so much better. am glad I fixed the chain. Even though everything was working fine, the chain wasn't causing any issues with how short it was. The problem is at that extreme angle, you're gonna prematurely wear the jockey wheels. Now, the original Suntour jockey wheels, there's a limited supply because they don't make them anymore. So I'd much rather buy a brand new chain, get that fixed, and preserve the vintage jockey wheels on here. I'm so happy with the conclusion here because now I truly know that that rear derailleur is better than the Alpha 3000 rear derailleur. Also, the Alpha 5000 is actually better than the Alpha 3000 front derailleur. So I'm going to keep this set up permanently. And unfortunately, the Alpha 3000 has got to go. It would be good if you're casually riding, or what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna keep it as a placeholder in case if I have any projects in the future. But with how aggressive I do ride my bikes and how much experience I have, I need something that can actually take the power I put down, the shifting, and my riding style. Lastly, the tires, my saddle, and the rear derailleur actually match really good. I'm really happy I did switch the rear derailleur because I think it ties all the logos together quite well. But that's the beauty of building bikes. You just figure out what works, experiment, and that's what's the most satisfying avenue to take rather than just buying a brand new bike. Nothing against buying a brand new bike, but if you're into building, this is so much fun. I wanna thank you so much for subscribing and liking and commenting on all my videos. I really appreciate it. It's so fun to make these for you all, and I'll definitely be making another video. Catch you next time.